All right, guys, we have a special guest this week. We have Steph from 49 Carats Podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate the invite.
How are you feeling about Brock Purdy coming back so soon from this injury and kind of being handed the keys to the team? Like, are you confident that he's going to be good to go and he's going to be the guy?
Yeah, as far as being like so soon, I don't think it's too soon, right? Because he's been fully cleared. So I think we could feel good about that. And also, I think the fact that they're staying within the planned timeline, he's not full go as far as the timeline goes, right? He's still 2 days on, 1 day off. So they're adhering to that. I think that's good. It means they're not necessarily rushing him back, but they are still staying within the means of what he can do. This is great. It's best case scenario for this team that he can practice now in training camp and get up to speed again with these guys. And it's huge. I mean, we did see some rust, to start training camp with Brock, and that's kind of to be expected. The valuable part of him being out there now is that he has the chance to shake off that rust before week 1. Otherwise, we might get that slow start, at the start of the season. So I'm expecting him to, yes, be the starter in week 1, but also he should be by that time on the same page as these guys and, hopefully not miss a beat. Now, as far as him, being handed the keys to the franchise right now, and being the week 1 starter, supposedly, Kyle hasn't actually said that yet, but I think, we all know he has said it without having to say it, and this team has said it. So, I think that's deserved based on what he did last year. And I think John Lynch said it at some point this offseason that what Brock Purdy has done kind of outweighs anything that, some of the other guys would be able to do in training camp and OTAs and whatnot, right? Because what Brock Purdy did was in games, and it wasn't just any games. It was, some playoff games and some tough games at the end of the year, right? So I think that means something, and it holds a lot of weight. And so I think it made sense always for them to say he was the leader of the clubhouse. And also, if anything, like it could set a fire under a guy like Lance. And when you bring Darnold in, it's like you set that bar. Okay, like I got to be this good if I want to be the starter on this team. So I think it's great for the team, and I think Brock deserves it. So. Based on what we've heard from camp and what I've seen, I don't think there's any reason to believe that he won't be the starting quarterback. And I think it's deserved. I don't think he should be in a competition with anyone based on what I've seen.
Yeah. And just to kind of like follow up on that, Trey Lance has been building momentum throughout the last couple of days. He's had a couple of good practices. Do you see him at any point stepping in to being a starter, or do you think a year from now he's going to be moved on from the team?
I would like to see Trey Lance stay on the team, just based on some of the injuries that happened last year. I mean, you just never know. You can't really assume, I guess, at this point that your starter is going to be healthy, much less a starter who's coming off an injury, right? So I think that I can't really say if Lance is going to have an opportunity to start in the season. That would mean a couple of things, like either Brock Purdy's not playing very well, and he would have to really stink it up, I think, for them to consider it, or we see, Purdy get hurt, right? So I think those are the situations in which we can potentially see Lance in the season. But also at this point, we don't know who's going to even be the backup, right? Is it going to be Darnold, or is it going to be Lance? Or in some weird, messed up reality, could it be Brandon Allen? So, we just don't know right now. And I think unless, Lance is the backup, maybe there's a chance that we see him in the season, but we just don't know. But I think he should stay on this team. I feel like he's proved at least that much to this point.
Yeah, and I'm kind of a proponent of like maybe Trey Lance is like the right quarterback, but this was just the wrong like team, like the wrong timing. It just didn't line up for what the San Francisco 49ers needed at this time. It's a bunch of vets that were ready to get after it, and they didn't want to like, hey, we're going to take some licks and learn some lessons. They were like, let's get after it.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't make sense a whole lot from the standpoint of where they were and where Trey Lance was and needing to develop him, and there being a lack of patience for that. I don't know if they thought that he was maybe further along than he actually was. I mean, certainly the mechanics and all that was an issue. And looking at, if you compare what his throwing motion looked like then to what it is now, then you can really see like, oh wow, like that was a pretty big issue that he needed to fix. But maybe, I don't know, like, did they just not know that it was that bad? Like, I kind of find that hard to believe too. Like, that it seems like there's just a lot of maybe some miscalculations on their part as far as, what Trey Lance was coming out. And so that plus not having the time or the patience to develop him. But that being said, I mean, last year he was the starter. He was kind of handed, the keys to the franchise then, and just to see what he can do and go through those bumps with him. And he ended up getting hurt. So it's more so just like unlucky than unfair for him and the team. But in the meantime, they've found Brock Purdy. They stumbled upon Brock Purdy, and he ended up being really, really good. So I understand it from the team standpoint. Just very unfortunate for Lance that he can't have that opportunity to get those reps to grow, because I think it would serve him right to get more snaps, because I think he's also like a rhythm guy. The more snaps he gets, like he kind of gets in a groove. But how is he going to get in a groove if he doesn't get those opportunities, right? He's not going to get those opportunities as long as Brock Purdy's out there. So, it's unfortunate. But I think the 49ers should stick around for him and just see what he could be. I know how much they invested in him, and I guess like you could say it's a waste for him to be a backup, but I think it would also be a waste if they just got rid of him now, right? Like it just wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah, like speaking on that, where he came into a weird situation, I also think it contributed that Kyle is kind of a weird guy, where if he likes a quarterback, like that's going to be his guy, and he's going to want to ride with that guy. Like the Nick Mullins and Beathards of the world are like, he's going to ride or die for those kind of guys. Like even now you're saying it's weird that Brandon Allen is getting so much playtime, and like it's looking like more and more, I wouldn't be surprised if Brandon Allen is our backup just because Kyle loves the guy. And even Brock Purdy making the roster in the first place, like he was the fourth quarterback on the roster, but because Kyle loved him, he cut Nate Sudfeld, who they just paid, and they kept Brock. And I don't know, it seems kind of a little bit of a disconnect for a second in the Niners, where they were like, we need to go for this Josh Allen generational type talent over someone who Kyle is really going to want to work with and ride for.
Yeah, I think there's also a bit of, Kyle Shanahan going with what's comfortable to him. And, I almost got the sense that Trey Lance and calling plays for Trey Lance, he was uncomfortable with that. It kind of felt like at times. And maybe, I don't know, maybe Trey Lance was uncomfortable with, Kyle's offense. Maybe it was a little of both, right? But, I think that is somewhat part of it, because Purdy, Jimmy Garoppolo, I think those are quarterbacks who kind of play the way that, Kyle Shanahan likes, right? And by that, I mean, they're really good at short intermediate. They can move the ball well. They can process well. They do the foundational things well. And I think that those things mean a lot to Kyle. And I was just talking about this earlier that, I think Trey Lance could make the the tough throws look easy, but he has a hard time with the easy throws, the layup throws at times. And I think that's been an issue too. Like, how is Kyle Shanahan supposed to trust you in his offense, an offense that is the foundation of it is those short, intermediate, those layup throws, right? If you can't hit those consistently, like, how are you supposed to get, Kyle's trust, right? So I think that's the hurdle that Lance kind of needs to get over. And, I think he's trying in this training camp, but that's, what we're going to have to see at some point.